Few worlds have captured our attention the way Rapture did back in 2007. It was an underwater nightmare and a masterpiece of art design, depicting a once proud society on the brink of disaster. Most dystopian worlds these days tend to have similar aesthetics. You've got your typical crumbling infrastructure, dirt-covered civilians, and photorealistic graphics. But Bioshock went a different route. An Art Deco society that was full of potent imagery, including mutated humans, demonic children, colorful vending machines, and of course, those iconic monstrosities known as Big Daddies. And yet, underneath this darkly beautiful layer was a narrative full of depth. It depicted socio-political themes in a way not seen before, pushing the argument forward that video games can indeed be high art. The world of Bioshock began as an attempt to develop a sequel to the cult classic System Shock 2. However, as a result of its predecessor's financial failure, the idea was ultimately scrapped in favor of a game that would retain some of the same concepts but explore a different thematic landscape. This new theme came about when writer and director Ken Levine took inspiration from a few real-life figures: John Rockefeller, George Orwell, and Ayn Rand. The idea was to tackle this relationship between industry and human progress, which was something Levine had been studying since college. But it was Rand and her philosophy of objectivism that served as the backbone for Bioshock's world. It's an idea that if human interest is allowed to run without restraints, it will create the drive for societal innovation. Basically, take hedonism, combine it with laissez-faire economics, and times the sum by 1,000, and you have objectivism. This theory was outlined in two of her novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. It's with these two books that Levine's genius integration begins with Bioshock. The Fountainhead tells the story of a striving architect who refuses to sacrifice his artistic vision in the face of societal opposition. Atlas Shrugged, on the other hand, tells the story of a group of people that leave their home to create their own society where objectivist thought can rule. If these sound familiar, it's because it's the exact same premise that Rapture's backstory runs on. In the words of its founder, Andrew Ryan, as stated in-game, it wasn't impossible to build Rapture at the bottom of the sea, it was impossible to build it anywhere else. He and his team of objectivist idealists captured Rapture for the sole purpose of progress. What Levine did was take the pretty picture Rand had painted and apply it to a sci-fi yet very realistic world. Without any form of government regulations, these scientists were able to create biological enhancements called plasmids to sell on the free market, which is depicted through the aforementioned vending machines. The funny noises you hear upon checking out these machines is just sly commentary on the nature of corporate marketing. They wouldn't be complete without funny faces, bright lights, and short, charismatic slogans. They're all just little tiny tricks to attract customers in real life. The big irony in Bioshock is that these same rhetorical devices are being implemented to sell unethical things like bombs.
Welcome to the Circus of Values!
And yet, even with all the attention given to mimicking Rand's theories, Bioshock's analysis on objectivism is actually negative. There's no official standards on wages and wealth distribution, so income inequality grows tremendously in Rapture. As Fontaine and Atlas manipulate the poor into waging class warfare against the rich, you can see this theory start to build. Without any child labor laws present in Rapture, orphaned girls or little sisters become exploited by both sides to mass create the plasmid material or atom. It's private industry profiteering without law, and the lack of law leading to Rapture's ruin. Without government services like fire departments and veteran affairs, it's ensured that there is very little hope for the city getting repaired, or its inhabitants getting the help they need. Remember all those crazy splicers that run around Rapture attacking you on sight? Would you guess that they are actually surviving soldiers from the Civil War suffering from PTSD and plasmid addiction? Why did they get that way? Well, because no government, no public services, and no help. Those are the risks when you have a self-run society. A final effect of Ryan's utopia is the massive pollution seen in Rapture of material goods, including pet bars, cigarettes, alcohol, potato chips, and so forth, an obvious remark on the problems of unfettered consumerism. So was Bioshock effective in critiquing Rand's objectivism, or did it fall prey to hypocrisy? As I talked about in my Far Cry, A Great and Terrible Franchise video, there's a concept in games called ludonarrative dissonance. It's a big fancy word for when themes of a game go against its gameplay. For example, in Mirror's Edge, you're fighting against the oppression of free will, only for the game to force you down a linear path to beat each of its levels, to control you in your quest to get control. Bioshock's storyline criticizes Ayn Rand's advocation of selfish pursuit, but at the same time advocates playing selfishly in order to progress through the game. For example, throughout the story, the character of Jack is doing everything he can to survive and gain more power, no matter the immorality. Whether it's hunting down people for the sociopath Sander Cohen, or murdering non-aggressive big daddies to harvest their little sisters, the player is doing things for selfish reasons. After all, it's not until the final act where you go after Atlas that Bioshock actually becomes a tale of selfless activism. The counter-argument to this, of course, could be the fact that Jack is not technically in control of his actions. As the plot twist reveals, he has been controlled by Fontaine's "would you kindly" phrase since the very beginning. Regardless, even if this ludonarrative dissonance accusation holds true, the debate ultimately comes down to a tu quoque fallacy. That is, even if Levine is a hypocrite, it does not diminish the narrative depth of Bioshock or his critiques regarding objectivism. Even though it's been years since I first finished Bioshock, the sights and sounds from it I'll never forget. From Atlas giving commands over the radio, to the horrifying backdrop of the medical pavilion, to the little sisters crying over the body of a dead Big Daddy. Bioshock has got to be one of the greatest visions brought to life, from idea to theme to game. A wonderful yet disturbing game that is hard to forget, and setting a high standard for video game thematics as a whole, weaving and hiding this concept of objectivism around itself. How far down into the darkness does Rapture really go? Thanks very much for checking out my Bioshock video. If you enjoy the content I put out on this channel, feel free to subscribe to Downward Thrust and consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/downwardthrust. I want to wish everyone an amazing day, and we'll see you in our next video.